When Don Henley looks back on his life, the story isn't only about fame, fortune, or the countless songs that became anthems for generations. It's also about a man who wandered through heartbreak, searching for stability in a world where everything moved too fast. He had brushes with love, moments that seemed like they would last forever, only to dissolve into pain and regret. But there came a moment when all the noise faded, and Henley finally admitted who truly changed his life. At 77 years old, he no longer hides the truth about the woman who gave him peace after years of chaos, a young Texan with big dreams. Donald Hugh Henley was born on July 22, 1947, in Gilmer, Texas. He was the only child of C.J. Henley and his wife Hughleen. His father was a World War II veteran who later worked in automobile parts, while his mother spent most of her life caring for the family. Don grew up in the small town of Linden, where life was simple, but expectations were heavy. He attended Linden Kildare High School, at first dreaming of being a football player. But when his coach realized his body wasn't built for the sport, he pushed Don toward the school band. It was there that Henley discovered his true calling. He first picked up the trombone, but eventually moved to percussion, an instrument that suited both his precision and restless energy. Music soon became more than a hobby. It became an escape from the limited opportunities of small-town Texas. By the late 1960s, he joined a band with childhood friend Richard Bowden. That band went through several lineups and names before it settled on Shiloh. In 1969, fate intervened when country legend Kenny Rogers took an interest in them and gave them their first real shot. Shiloh recorded a self-titled album in 1970, but creative differences and tragedy quickly ended their run. One of Henley's close friends, Jerry Surratt, died in a dirt bike accident before their first single was even released. It was Henley's first brush with the fragility of life and the cruelty of timing. By 1971, Shiloh had disbanded, leaving Don uncertain of his path forward. Yet within that same year, he met Glenn Frey, and the two were recruited to join Linda Ronstadt's touring band. That connection would change Henley's life forever, setting him on the path toward forming the Eagles, one of the most successful bands in American history, Eagles fame and the first heartbreaks. By 1972, Don Henley's life had changed completely. With Glenn Frey, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner, he co-founded the Eagles. Their debut album was released that same year under Asylum Records, and it instantly made waves. Songs like Take It Easy and Witchy Woman defined the early sound of the band. But behind the harmonies and success, Henley was already experiencing the kind of turbulence that would later shape both his music and personal life. In 1974, at the height of the Eagles' early fame, Henley began dating Lori Rodkin, a rising jewelry designer. Their romance seemed promising, but it carried shadows. Lori was ambitious, restless, and already well-connected in Hollywood circles. When the relationship collapsed, it was bitter. Don poured his pain into music, and that heartbreak became the seed for some of the band's most haunting tracks. Wasted Time and parts of Hotel California were directly inspired by their split, with lyrics that captured loneliness and the realization that even the brightest love could burn out quickly. For Henley, success on the charts was intertwined with private loss. Soon after, another woman entered his life, Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. Their worlds collided during the mid-70s when both bands were at the peak of stardom. Their relationship was intense, chaotic, and deeply complicated. They were together on and off for nearly 2 years, and for a time Stevie believed she had found someone who treated her differently from the rest. "Don always treated me like we were married," she once admitted. But their connection carried more heartbreak than stability. Years later, Stevie revealed that she had once been pregnant with Henley's child. She made the painful choice to have an abortion, and in a 2014 interview with Billboard, she confessed that this moment partly inspired her song Sarah. She admitted, "Had I married Dawn and had that baby, and had she been a girl, I would have named her Sarah." Though she later clarified that the song had multiple inspirations, her words left no doubt that Henley's presence marked her life profoundly. For Dawn, this chapter showed once again how closely his romances were tied to the music the world would never forget: engagements, breakups, and songs of regret. As the Eagles dominated the charts in the late 1970s, Don Henley's private life remained unsettled. He was a superstar, but when it came to love, stability always seemed out of reach. After Lori Rodkin and Stevie Nicks, he entered another relationship that promised security but ended in disappointment. In the early 1980s, Henley began seeing Lois Childs, a model and actress best known for playing Dr. Holly Goodhead opposite Roger Moore in the 1979 James Bond film Moonraker. Their romance lasted 3 years. Looking back, Chili's described it simply but painfully. "It wasn't working out, even though we loved each other very, very much." She admitted they adored one another and shared genuine affection, but it wasn't enough. Their breakup was one of those quiet tragedies that left both parties wounded but still respectful. Not long after, Henley became engaged to actress Maren Jensen, famous for her role in Battlestar Galactica. For a while, it seemed as if Don might finally be ready to settle down. He even dedicated his first solo album, I Can't Stand Still, to her. Jensen appeared in his music video for Not Enough Love in the World in 1985 and provided harmony vocals on Johnny Can't Read. Their bond was serious enough that friends believed marriage and children were inevitable. But by 1986, the engagement ended. Once again, Henley was left alone, his personal life collapsing under the weight of fame, pressure, and complicated emotions. The heartbreak lingered for decades. More than 40 years later, Henley admitted that the experience of losing Jensen had stayed with him, inspiring him to co-write The Heart of the Matter, a song about forgiveness, loss, and the painful lessons love often leaves behind. Through each of these relationships, Henley seemed to be searching for something lasting, a partner who could survive the whirlwind of his world and give him the family life he secretly longed for. But by the mid-1980s, that dream still seemed far away. The man who wrote timeless songs about love and heartbreak couldn't find peace in his own life. The stage gave him applause, but when the lights dimmed, he returned to silence. Meeting Sharon Summerall and finding peace. By the early 1990s, Don Henley had lived through the chaos of fame, the collapse of the Eagles, and a string of failed romances. He was approaching his late 40s, a stage in life when many people begin to question what really matters. For Henley, the answer finally came when he met Sharon Summerall, a former model from Dallas, Texas. Sharon's story was different from the women Henley had dated before. She wasn't part of Hollywood's fast-paced spotlight. Born and raised in Texas, she attended Richardson High School before starting a modeling career that brought her to New York and Europe. She signed with Ford Models and worked in commercial and catalog modeling. But her career was tragically cut short after a car accident in December 1982 left her with a serious neck injury. Though she returned to modeling 2 years later, another cruel blow awaited her. Sharon was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a disease that would change the course of her life. Despite her challenges, Sharon had a calmness and strength that immediately drew Don in. They met through music agent Angus Wynn, and the connection was undeniable. Within 2 years, Henley was certain he had finally found the woman who could bring him stability. On May 20th, 1995, Don Henley and Sharon Summerall were married in Dallas. The wedding was nothing short of legendary, with some of the biggest names in music there to celebrate: Bruce Springsteen, Sting, Billy Joel, John Fogerty, Jackson Browne, Sheryl Crow, Tony Bennett, and even Henley's longtime bandmate Glenn Frey attended. It was a rare gathering of rock royalty, And yet at the center of it all was not the music, but the quiet love between Don and Sharon. Henley wrote, "Everything is different now," as a tribute to his wife, describing her as an angel with the golden wings and a heart as big as Texas. It was the kind of love song that didn't come from youthful infatuation, but from the deep gratitude of a man who had finally found what he had been searching for. For Henley, Sharon was more than a partner. She was the anchor that steadied a restless soul. After decades of turbulence, Don Henley had finally found peace in love. Building a family in Dallas. Marriage to Sharon Summerall changed Don Henley in ways that even music had not. For decades, he had drifted between the extremes of stardom, stadium tours, chart-topping albums, and nights that blurred into excess. But with Sharon, the chaos began to quiet. Just 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed their first daughter, Annabelle. Soon after came Julia, and then their son, Will. For Henley, fatherhood was the chapter he never thought he would reach. Yet once it began, he embraced it completely. The couple made a crucial decision early on. They would leave Los Angeles. Henley had lived most of his adult life in California, where fame shadowed every step. But he didn't want his children to grow up surrounded by the self-absorption of Hollywood. Instead, they moved back to Texas, settling in Dallas. It was a return to his roots, but more importantly, it gave his children the kind of upbringing he had once known. He told the Mirror, "I wanted my children to have an upbringing similar to my own. I don't want to raise my children out there in an environment of such self-absorption. Not that it can't be done, but it is too difficult, especially as I am not around all the time." Life in Dallas was quieter, but not without its challenges. Sharon's multiple sclerosis diagnosis had already ended her modeling career, and the disease was unpredictable. Henley spoke candidly about it in interviews, admitting that some weeks were good and others were painful. "We're fortunate in that she has the relapsing, remitting form of MS, not the kind where you go straight downhill. So she's holding her own. We feel hopeful about the future. She can still drive and get around. She's not getting better, but she's not getting worse." Even with her illness, Sharon was deeply involved in raising their children. They lived close to her parents, who played an active role in helping with the grandchildren. For Don, this support system mirrored his own childhood, when grandparents were at the heart of family life. His days now included watching soccer and volleyball games, fishing trips with his kids, and family dinners that mattered more than sold-out concerts. As he told the Wall Street Journal in 2015, "I have a wife and 3 teenagers, and they are the best and most important things in my life." The love of his life. As the years went by, Don Henley's priorities became clearer. The man once consumed by fame, tangled romances, and the endless pressure of the music industry began to speak openly about what truly mattered. Sharon Summerall was not just his wife. She was the person who reshaped his entire existence. In interviews, Henley often returned to the same theme: timing. "I was engaged a couple of times, but I never went through with it," he confessed in 2008. "I think I would have been a failure if I had done it earlier. And I've always believed that the lives of children are too important to be part of an immature experiment." Those words carried the weight of decades of searching. All the heartbreak, all the songs about broken love, had led him to a woman who brought calm and purpose. His 2000 album Inside Job became the most direct reflection of this transformation. Songs like Taking You Home celebrated fatherhood and family life, while Everything Is Different Now was written explicitly for Sharon. He described her as the angel with golden wings, who had seen him in the dark and pulled him into the light. For a rock star who had written some of the sharpest songs about pain and betrayal, these ballads revealed a rare vulnerability. Even as Sharon battled multiple sclerosis, their marriage remained strong. She kept a low profile, rarely appearing in the spotlight, but she was always by his side when it mattered. In 2016, she joined him and their children at the Kennedy Center Honors, where the Eagles were celebrated for their legacy. Together they posed for photos, not as celebrities, but as a family that had endured. Now, at 77, Don Henley admits without hesitation that Sharon was the love of his life. After years of chasing fleeting connections, he finally found the person who stood with him through illness, through age, and through the quiet moments away from the stage. His story is no longer just about the Eagles or his legendary career. It's about a man who spent decades searching and, against all odds, found a love that lasted. For Don Henley, the greatest song he ever wrote may not be one that topped the charts, but the life he built with Sharon Summerall. Their marriage, their children, and their strength through hardship tell a story of love far deeper than fame. What do you think is Don Henley's most unforgettable love song? One about heartbreak or one about finding peace? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.